Hello there, I'm Sarah, your natural endometriosis expert. Welcome to my podcast. This is the place to be for information, advice and tips on managing your endometriosis naturally. I've been managing my own endo now successfully for about 20 years, and I've been running my own therapy business since 2008, helping others to do the same. If you're curious to cut through all the noise and rubbish that's out there and learn the key to managing endometriosis with minimal reliance on drugs and surgery, then this is the only podcast you'll need. Let's get started. Hello there, welcome to this week's podcast. So this week I'm going to be answering a fabulous question that was asked to me. And as I was answering it, I was thinking this would make a fabulous podcast. So here I am. The question is, isn't endometriosis just a fungal infection? Wow. Turns out it's actually quite a common misconception when I started looking into it. Now, as I was reading up, I was kind of thinking, where on earth has this idea come from? And I think I've found the source. I might be wrong, there might be a few sources, but what I did find was an article published in a well-known international magazine that had misquoted Whoopi Goldberg. Now, Whoopi Goldberg was speaking at one of the Endometriosis Foundation's AGM a few years back, and she was misquoted in this article. And the article had said that when she was giving her speech, she said that she'd found a GP who says, you've got endometriosis, prescribed her antibiotics, and her symptoms disappeared. So as you can imagine, I was getting a bit irate reading this article, looking up the editor's name, penning already in my head an email that I was going to send them. And then I looked at the source of the article. And actually, when you go back to the source, they didn't necessarily misquote Whoopi Goldberg, but they kind of missed out the fundamental part of Whoopi's story. Now, what had actually happened was Whoopi Goldberg had been talking about the symptoms of her endometriosis. And that included recurring UTIs, so recurring bladder infections, recurring urine infections. And this had been going on for years. And she'd just been repeatedly fobbed off, as many of us are, repeatedly fobbed off, repeatedly gaslit. And she finally found a GP, a doctor, who linked the other symptoms she was having, the other endo symptoms she was having, and the UTIs, the recurring bladder infections. The doctor said to her, putting all of this together, I know what you've got. It's endometriosis. So she, like the other doctors, prescribed antibiotics for the urine infection and then referred her through to a gynaecologist who was then able to address the wider endometriosis. I might be wrong actually, I was going to say I think she had a hysterectomy. I need to relook at that. But anyway, she got treatment for her endometriosis on the back of finding that GP. So that half story that had been reported by the newspaper, kudos kind of for making it a story in the first place. Certainly kudos for anybody who's reading it. But please do, if you do see that article, please do click through to the source, because Whoopi's story is not unlike all of us. We have various symptoms that taken in isolation mean one thing, but when you put it all together, it screams endometriosis. We have symptoms that are ignored, we have symptoms that keep coming back, that we keep being given medication for, that keep coming back. When you put it all together, it's endometriosis. So the person who I was talking to, I sort of swallowed down my anger's not quite the right word. I don't know what the word is, but anyway, I swallowed down the emotion that made me want to scream. And I said, no, it's not an inflammation. It's not an infection. It's not a fungal infection. Well, okay, then what causes endometriosis? Again, fabulous question. If you ask a Western doctor, they will tell you that they don't know. And this was my answer to this person. If you ask a Western doctor, they will tell you you don't know. They don't know what causes endometriosis. So this person then came back at me and said, well, that's great, but something must cause it. So why do they not know? I said, well, I can't answer that, but what I can do is tell you my theory. So for those of you who haven't heard my theory about what causes endometriosis, strap yourself in. It's nothing earth-shattering if you are already in the world of alternative, natural Eastern medicine. So this is all about what the Chinese call stagnation. So the Chinese believe, and well, Eastern philosophy believes that we have energy flowing through us, and when this energy gets stuck, it causes stagnation. Stagnation manifests in our bodies as things like bruising, swelling, inflammation, pain, clotting, all of the things that we associate with endometriosis. There's a whole host more, and if you do want to delve a little bit deeper into that, a great starting point is, I think I did a YouTube video on it. I've certainly done another podcast on it. And my 3-step process introduction video as well goes into a lot of detail about this. But just as a basic, we have this energy flowing through us. When that energy gets blocked, it translates into stagnation, exactly the same way as pond water. So exactly the same way, if water sits still for any length of time, it starts to stagnate. Our bodies are highly made up of water. So if we start to see stagnation forming within our bodies, we start to get these things happening. We start to build up a level of toxicity in our body that is akin to stagnant water. And that's when we start to see things like inflammation, pain, all the rest of it. Okay, that might make sense, but what causes these blockages in our body? So exactly the same as a lot of other illnesses, the cause, I believe, of endometriosis isn't just one thing. We can't say this is the cause of endometriosis. However, obviously everybody's endometriosis has a cause, and it's pertinent to that person what that cause is. Now, that cause is it's either one of 3 or one of 5, depending on how you look at it. It's either one of 3 or one of 5 things. It is, and it can be a mix of all of these as well. It's either going to be a physical trauma, an emotional trauma, or a genetic trauma. And I'll explain all of those in a second. So that's 3. Why did I say 5? So emotional trauma and physical trauma are split into 2. So it's either a big trauma that happened all at once that has had lasting effects, so something like a car crash that causes a physical abnormality, if you will, or the same as an emotional thing, a one-off, massively impactful emotional trauma, or it's a slightly smaller thing that lasts over time. So taking the example back to the water, imagine a river flowing. There's a massive, great big storm, and a huge tree falls across the river. That tree blocks the water, and that causes stagnation. Quite quickly, not instantly, it does take time, but it's just that one thing that causes that stagnation. Or we have smaller things. So we have maybe a few different storms where smaller twigs, smaller branches fall across the river, and over greater time, this stagnation builds up. It's exactly the same principle. So you're either having one big emotional trauma, one big physical trauma, or we're seeing a build-up of smaller physical or emotional traumas over time. So it can be something like a tilted pelvis that isn't that severe, but over time it causes blockages. So many women who I've worked with over the years say, oh, I have one leg longer than the other. No, chances are you just have a tilted pelvis. Exactly the same with the emotional trauma. It can be one traumatic event that happened, or it can be if you struggle with anxiety, if you struggle with depression, that repeatedly happening over the years can actually cause that same level of build-up of stagnation. So the genetic trauma, epigenetics is accepted in Western medicine and Western philosophies, and essentially what that is how your situation, your environment impacts you at the pregnancy stage. So a really clear example of this is the advice not to smoke during pregnancy. So and again, this is not a massive trauma. This is more of the sort of the slower, lower level. If a pregnant lady is surrounded in a smoky environment, even if she's not smoking herself, but if she's spending a lot of time and has spent a lot of time in a smoky environment, then that will shift the cell formation slightly, the genetic makeup of her baby. So you will see slight mutations in the cells of the forming baby, which could lead to susceptibility of certain illnesses. Exactly the same principle, but with a bit more abstract in terms of emotional stuff. So if we take that as read and search epigenetics, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating subject. If we also apply that to the more abstract version that we believe in terms of Eastern natural medicine, that the emotional traumas that have such an impact on our physical health can actually be passed down through the generations as well. So if you have a hugely traumatic event happening to the grandmother that isn't healed, the impact of that, the cell mutation, the physical manifestation of that trauma can be passed on to her baby, and through her baby can be passed on to the next generation, etc., etc., and it gets passed down. So if you hear people talking about ancestral healing or cleansing the ancestral lineage, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about clearing those traumas of our forebears that still impact on us today. I could go into this forever. I won't. If you want to hear a whole podcast about this, do let me know, because I can make one. But I won't go into it now, otherwise the podcast will go on for about 3 hours. So, in answer to that person's question, Western medicine can't tell us what causes endometriosis. Eastern medicine can give us theories in terms of what types of things cause endometriosis. It's up to the individual, with help from somebody like me, there's plenty of us out there, to identify the specific traumas, the specific events that are causing that person's endometriosis, and then work with them to clear it. And part B, no, it's not a fungal infection. Whoopi Goldberg did not say that antibiotics cured her endometriosis. So please, if you come across that article, if you hear anybody else citing that article, please do make them aware that that was just a badly written, badly researched, badly cited article that has perpetuated yet another myth about this disease that really, or this condition that really, really is already shrouded in a lot of nonsense. I hope this has helped. Wherever you are on this planet, I hope that you're feeling good, and I wish you a fabulous week ahead. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope that you found this podcast helpful. If you did, please hit follow so you can listen to more, and please also share it with anyone else who you think will benefit. And don't forget, if you're looking for women's health treatments, workshops or support within your workplace, you can find all of my services, including our monthly virtual clinic, over at www.halcyonwomenshealth.com. I'll see you next time.